আমার প্রিয় শিক্ষার্থীবৃন্দ, সহকর্মীবৃন্দ এবং যে সকল দর্শক এই মুহূর্তে ফেসবুক লাইভ এবং ইউটিউব লাইভের মাধ্যমে আমাদের এই ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফিজিক্স ওয়েবিনারটি দেখছেন, আপনাদের সকলকে আমাদের ফেসবুক পেজ এবং ইউটিউব চ্যানেলে স্বাগতম। আশা করি সকলে ভালো আছেন এবং সুস্থ আছেন। আপনারা সকলে অবগত আছেন যে এই বিশ্ব করোনা মহামারীর সময়ে আমাদের বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের পদার্থবিজ্ঞান বিভাগ আমরা আমাদের ছাত্রছাত্রীদেরকে পড়াশোনার মধ্যে ধরে রাখা এবং পদার্থবিজ্ঞানকে ছাত্রছাত্রীদের মাঝে জনপ্রিয় করে তোলার জন্য আমরা একটা উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করেছিলাম। 2020 সালের জুন মাস থেকে আমরা শুরু করেছিলাম ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফিজিক্স ওয়েবিনার অনলাইন ক্লাসের পাশাপাশি। সেই ধারাবাহিকতায় আজকে আমাদের 144তম ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ফিজিক্স ওয়েবিনার এবং আজকে আমাদের ওয়েবিনারে আমাদের সাথে আছেন অস্ট্রেলিয়া থেকে ডক্টর প্রদীপ কুমার দেব দাদা, সিনিয়র লেকচারার অফ মেডিকেল রেডিয়েশন, RMIT ইউনিভার্সিটি মেলবোর্ন, এবং সে ইতিমধ্যে আমাদের সাথে সংযুক্ত হয়েছে। আমি ডক্টর প্রদীপ দেব দাদাকে আমাদের অনুষ্ঠানে স্বাগতম জানাচ্ছি। নমস্কার। শুভ বিকাল, শুভ সন্ধ্যা আপনার ওখানে। অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ যে আপনি বই বা বিভিন্ন লেখালেখি নিয়ে অনেক ব্যস্ত এবং গবেষণা নিয়ে তারপরেও আমাদেরকে সময় দিয়ে যাচ্ছেন। আমাদের ছাত্রছাত্রী এবং যারা এই প্রোগ্রামগুলো দেখে তাদের কথা ভেবে, এর জন্য আমরা সত্যি কৃতজ্ঞ। আপনারা ইতিমধ্যে অবগত হয়েছেন যে আমরা আমাদের এই ওয়েবিনার গুলো আসলে আমরা 3টা ভাগে ভাগ করি। প্রথমেই আমরা চেষ্টা করি আমাদের স্পিকারকে আপনাদের সাথে পরিচয় করিয়ে দিতে, তারপরে স্পিকার তার বক্তব্য পেশ করেন এবং শেষে আমরা একটা সময় রাখি কোশ্চেন এবং অ্যান্সার সেশন বা ডিসকাশন সেশন। সে সময় যে কেউ চাইলে আমাদের সংযুক্ত হতে পারে। এর পাশাপাশি আপনারা ফেসবুক এবং ইউটিউব কমেন্টের মাধ্যমেও আমাদের স্পিকারের কাছে যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে আপনারা কিন্তু করতে পারেন। আমরা দেখে নিই আজকে আমাদের যে স্পিকার ডক্টর প্রদীপ দেব স্যারের এডুকেশন এবং ক্যারিয়ার সম্পর্কে। ডক্টর প্রদীপ কুমার দেব এখন সিনিয়র লেকচারার হিসেবে কর্মরত আছেন ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ মেডিকেল রেডিয়েশন, RMIT ইউনিভার্সিটি মেলবোর্ন, অস্ট্রেলিয়াতে। দাদা তার ব্যাচেলার ডিগ্রি ফিজিক্সে সম্পন্ন করেছে ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ চিটাগাং থেকে 1990 সালে, মাস্টার্স ডিগ্রি সম্পন্ন করেছে ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ চিটাগাং থেকে 1993 সালে, এবং PhD ডিগ্রি নিউক্লিয়ার থিওরিতে ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ মেলবোর্ন 2001 সালে। পোস্ট ডক্টরাল ছিলেন 2001 থেকে 2003 সাল পর্যন্ত ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ মেলবোর্ন, অস্ট্রেলিয়াতে, এবং সে আরেকটা পোস্ট ডক 2003 থেকে 2005 সাল পর্যন্ত ছিলেন পোস্ট ডক ফেলো হিসেবে ওহাইও স্টেট ইউনিভার্সিটি, USA। এবং এরপরে তিনি কুইন্সল্যান্ড ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ টেকনোলজি, অস্ট্রেলিয়াতে MSc ইন মেডিকেল ফিজিক্স সে সম্পন্ন করেন। এরপরে প্রফেশনাল ক্যারিয়ার আমরা দেখি যে প্রোগ্রাম কোঅর্ডিনেটর ছিল সে মেডিকেল রেডিয়েশন ফিজিক্সে RMIT-তে, এবং এছাড়াও বিভিন্ন পদে সে দায়িত্ব পালন করছে ক্লাস নেওয়ার পাশাপাশি। আমরা তার রিসার্চ ইন্টারেস্টের দিকে যদি তাকাই, সে তার রিসার্চ ইন্টারেস্ট, যেহেতু সে মেডিকেল ফিজিক্সে কাজ করে, তার রিসার্চ ইন্টারেস্টগুলো রেডিওলজিক্যাল ইমেজিং ফিজিক্স, ডসিমেট্রি ইন কম্পিউটার টমোগ্রাফি, ডিজিটাল রেডিওগ্রাফি, রেডিও বায়োলজি, রেডিয়েশন প্রোটেকশন, নিউক্লিয়ার মেডিসিন টেকনোলজি, রেডিও নিউক্লাইডস, নিউক্লিয়ার স্ক্যাটারিং, প্রোটন এবং নিউট্রন স্ক্যাটারিং উইথ নিউক্লিয়াস, এবং ফিজিক্স এডুকেশন। এবং তার বিভিন্ন ইন্টারন্যাশনাল বিভিন্ন জার্নালে তার বেশ কিছু পাবলিকেশন আছে। এর পাশাপাশি তিনি প্রতিনিয়ত মজার মজার বিজ্ঞান বিষয়ে বই লিখে যাচ্ছেন আমাদেরকে আসলে বিজ্ঞানের প্রতি আকর্ষণ তৈরি করার জন্য। তো আপনাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ। আমরা এখন আমাদের প্রধান আলোচক আজকের অনুষ্ঠানে তার কাছে চলে যাব। দাদা, আপনাকে আবারও স্বাগতম, এবং এটা আপনার সময়, আপনি শুরু করতে পারেন। ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে।
ধন্যবাদ ডক্টর প্রীতম, আমাকে সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য। এই প্ল্যাটফর্মটাতে আমার এটা নিয়ে পঞ্চমবার আসা, এবং এটা খুবই একটা আনন্দের ব্যাপার এবং খুবই একটা গর্বের এবং বিস্ময়কর ব্যাপার যে মানে এই প্রোগ্রামটা 144তম। এটা আমি মনে করি এটা একটা ওয়ার্ল্ড রেকর্ড। এত যত ধরনের মানে ওয়েবিনার সিরিজ চলছে, এত দীর্ঘ ওয়েবিনার সিরিজ আমি এ পর্যন্ত দেখিনি। তো থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। এবং ডেফিনেটলি এটা আমাদের স্টুডেন্টরা আছেন এবং তারা নিয়মিত এটার চালিয়ে নিয়ে যাচ্ছেন। সেটা জন্য তাদের সবাইকে আমি আমি বলবো কৃতজ্ঞতা, কারণ এই যে বিজ্ঞানের খটোমটো জিনিস তো সাধারণত আমরা খুব একটা শুনতে চাই না, সময় দিতে চাই না। একটা 2 ঘন্টা 3 ঘন্টার সিনেমা হয়তো আমরা দেখতে পারি, তাও যদি আকর্ষণীয় হয়, অথবা রাজনৈতিক মারপিট আমরা দেখতে পারি, সেটা অনেক বেশি আকর্ষণীয় হয়। কিন্তু সে তুলনায় একাডেমিক আলোচনা, এই যে এত দীর্ঘ দিন ধরে, প্লাস এখানে যে সমস্ত কোয়ালিটেটিভ আলোচনা হয়েছে, এখানে অনেক আহ, সারা পৃথিবীর বিভিন্ন ইউনিভার্সিটির খুব সিনিয়র এবং অত্যন্ত কোর সায়েন্টিস্টরা এসেছেন, ইনক্লুডিং নোবেল লরিয়েটস। এটা কিন্তু একটা বিরাট বিষয়। আমি আজকে যে বিষয়টা নিয়ে আলোচনা করতে চাচ্ছি সেটা হচ্ছে আইনস্টাইন ইন 21st সেঞ্চুরি। আমি আইনস্টাইনের বিজ্ঞানের যে ডিটেলস আছে সেটা কিছুটা জটিল, আমি সেই বিষয়ে এখানে যাব না। এখানে আমি যেই বিষয় নিয়ে আলোচনা করব সেটা হচ্ছে, আমরা একটা প্রশ্ন সবসময় করে থাকি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের দেশে আইনস্টাইন জন্মায় না কেন, অথবা আমাদের শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠান গুলো থেকে আইনস্টাইন বের হয় না কেন। তাহলে আইনস্টাইন কি নিজের যোগ্যতায় সেটা ইউনিক, আর দ্বিতীয় কোনো আইনস্টাইন নেই, নাকি শুধু আমরা একজন আইনস্টাইনকে চিনি বলেই অন্যরা সেরকম ভাবে আসেন না, অথবা খ্যাতির পেছনে বিজ্ঞান ছাড়া অন্য কোনো কিছু কাজ করে কিনা। আমরা জানি যে আইনস্টাইন হচ্ছেন পৃথিবীর মধ্যে এ পর্যন্ত বিজ্ঞানে এত জনপ্রিয় অন্য কোনো বিজ্ঞানী আর নেই। আইনস্টাইনের পরে এতটা জনপ্রিয়তা কিছুটা পেয়েছিলেন, প্রায় কাছাকাছি পর্যায়ে জনপ্রিয়তা পেয়েছিলেন, সেটা হচ্ছে স্টিফেন হকিং। এখন এমন অনেক মানুষ আছেন যারা আইনস্টাইনের হয়তো ইকুয়ালস এমসি স্কোয়ার ইকুয়েশনটা জানেন, কিন্তু সেটা কিভাবে এসছে এবং সেটা কি কাজে লাগে এটা হয়তো অনেকেই জানেন না। তারপরেও আইনস্টাইন কিন্তু ভীষণ রকমের জনপ্রিয়। এই জনপ্রিয়তার উৎস কি? এত জনপ্রিয় হওয়া সত্ত্বেও আইনস্টাইন কিন্তু জনপ্রিয়তার জোয়ারে ভেসে যাননি। তার কারণটা কি? একজন মানুষ আকাশচুম্বী জনপ্রিয় হওয়ার পরেও উনির মাটির কাছাকাছি কিভাবে থাকেন, উনার পা কিভাবে মাটিতে লেগে থাকে, এত পোলাইটনেস, এত বিনয় একটা মানুষ কোত্থেকে পান? তাহলে এর পেছনে নিশ্চয়ই কোনো না কোনো ভাবে, কোনো না কোনো জায়গা থেকে একটা শিক্ষা জড়িত আছে, কিছু সংগ্রাম সেখানে জড়িত আছে। আরো একটা বিষয় জানা আছে, সেটা হচ্ছে আপনারা অনেকেই হয়তো জানেন, আজকালকার যুগে এখন আমরা সবাই, এমনকি বাংলাদেশেও, আমাদের ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে ইংরেজি শিখাচ্ছি, এবং সরকারি ভাবেও কিন্তু বাংলাদেশে আরেকটা মিডিয়াম একটা শিক্ষা চালু হয়েছে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে বাংলা এবং ইংরেজি পাশাপাশি কিন্তু আমরা প্রাধান্য দিচ্ছি ইংরেজিকে। এখন এই যে ব্যাপারটা, এইটা কেন? আইনস্টাইন নিজে কিন্তু খুব ভালো ইংরেজি জানতেন না। উনি আমেরিকায় যাওয়ার আগ পর্যন্ত ওনার প্রকাশনা সবগুলি ছিল জার্মানিতে, জার্মান ভাষায়, এবং ওনার যেই সমস্ত যুগান্তকারী গবেষণাপত্র উনি লিখেছেন, সবগুলি গবেষণাপত্র উনি লিখেছেন ওনার নিজের ভাষায়, মাতৃভাষায়, জার্মান ভাষায়। এখন ভাষাটা কি কোনো ফ্যাক্টর? আমি এই কয়েকটা জিনিস আলোচনা করব ওনার জীবনের মধ্য দিয়ে, ওনার জীবন কিভাবে হয়েছে সেইভাবে। সো এখন আমি যেটা, আমার কন্ট্রোলটা পাচ্ছি না, আচ্ছা এখন আসছে, আমি যেটা আলোচনা করব। আচ্ছা, আমাকে একজন এখানে, আমি ইয়েতে চ্যাটে দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে ইংরেজিতে বলার জন্য, শুড আই স্পিক ইন ইংলিশ?
ক্যান স্যার,
আই মিন ক্যান অর শুড?
ইউ শুড।
Okay, so that will be easier for me, even better. So what I was trying to say is, today I'll be discussing about through Einstein's life, his study. So I'll be just going through his personal life, and then I'll be discussing when I'll be going through his chronological personal life, his academic life will be there. And definitely when his academic life comes, his scientific life will also be there. And also when his scientific life comes, definitely he is not a kind of isolated island from somewhere. He will have definitely his political views. And all sorts of this life basically originated from his student life. So I'll be emphasizing on his student life. That means his study pattern. And then a very question is there. Even he was the person of the 20th century. He was the person of the century. You can see that here in the Time magazine. He was actually person of the century, and he was the person of the year for 4 times in his lifetime. But why he is still so alive even in 21st century? He is alive because nowadays, without his relativistic theory, without his relativistic application, we can't do anything. Anything means anything. We can't do anything in the microscopic level. Everything is so high speed, and so relativistic mechanism is needed to be applied. Now everybody using the location, GPS, and etc. Even the whole space-time scenario, the black hole. Einstein didn't believe in black hole in his lifetime, but now with his theory, we get a concrete idea about black hole, about the space. So Einstein is everywhere. That's fine. But I will try to go a little bit closer to us, especially for our student. What did he get in his student life that perhaps we are not getting today? Why? So the first start very slowly, everybody knows now, because Einstein is so practiced. At least we know about Albert Einstein. So March 14th, 1879, he was born in Ulm, Germany. So it was a very small city in Germany. And next year, like the following year, 1880, his parents moved from Ulm to Munich because they had a small industry or electrical industry they have. And this is the 19th century, at the end of 19th century. And during that time in America, the Edison's bulb and etc., electric light and etc. is already there. We did not have full theory for it, but the industry was booming at that time. So Einstein's family, like the parents, they had the industry. So Einstein, in three, his younger sister Maria, later called Maya, was born in 1881, and then at the age of 1885, he started his primary school. We can see him here in the front row, like second from the right. So that is his school photograph. So this was his primary school. And later we have found that Einstein did not like his primary school. So he did not like his primary school because it was fully rote learning, and also they were emphasizing on the discipline of the class. So Einstein later on actually said that it's a kind of like military-like school. And that was the schooling system in Germany. Even later year, the German school system was very, very strict. Still, they are very strict. Then in 1894, so he leaves his school. That was his junior school and high school. He left it because he did not like the school. And also his parents, they became bankrupt few years back. So they wanted to actually do something. They couldn't do anything in Germany. So they went to Italy, in Milan. So, but Albert was left alone for finishing his school. But in the school, Einstein had to study a lot of things that was like not interest him at all. So he didn't like school. He wanted to go back. So he dropped the school. He took a train and went to Milan without telling anybody. But Einstein's mother was very strict. So she didn't like it. She didn't like that Einstein escaped school. So she asked him, "What is your plan? What do you do?" So Einstein wanted to get into Swiss Polytechnic. So that time, Swiss Polytechnic was one of the famous school, famous university but it's a called Polytechnic, but that is a mainly engineering school, very much like our BUET. So everybody wanted to be in that school, but they have got a very strong and very restrictive admission system. They had to pass the admission like the test. But Einstein at that time was not actually, the age was a little bit bar. He was like 6 months short of the required age, but also he did not graduate from his high school. So he was not actually fit for the test. But his mother, Pauline, was very influential woman. So you see that one thing we should note at here, even in that time, influence used to work. Even in Europe, it used to work. So they actually bent the rule for Einstein and allow him to sit for the admission test. The condition is, if he passes the admission test, he could start his, that is, university equivalent polytechnic. Even he did not graduate from the school. So that was a kind of like, so the test was very high because their philosophy was, if without a school certificate you can pass the admission test, so that's, you're fine, you're fit for it. He sat for the test and he passed all the science subject, but there were literature and etc., and he failed those subjects. So he was failed for the admission test. So this was very popular. Popular means this story has got so many different types of branches, and people like to say that even Einstein failed. Yes, Einstein failed. That's a fact. So then what happened? Then is university, the Polytechnic gave him condition that now go, come back next year for another admission test, but in the meantime, you should graduate your school, because we banned a rule for the first time and we cannot ban it twice. So he went for another school. That is like in the Swiss border. That school was Arau School. And in that, from that school, like they enrolled in 1895, he enrolled in school Arau, and he used to live with a family that was his mother's family house, and the Jost Winteler. So Jost Winteler was a teacher for that school, the Arau school, and he was there in the higher class, and then he passed. After passing this one, in his second attempt for the entry to the Zurich Polytechnic, that is the Poly, that is a very, very like prestigious school, and he got admitted. I will emphasize later on this system, because this school, this is a kind of university, we call it university education. It is mainly engineering university, but Einstein's target was not to become an engineer. He actually started his diploma, they call it diploma, for 4-year diploma, and to become a school teacher. So Einstein wanted to be a school teacher, a mathematics school teacher. That was his aim of life. A lot of people say, okay, aim to be Einstein. Okay, if I want to aim to be Einstein, I want to be a school teacher. So that he started. And then after 4 years, he graduated. In 1900, he gets diploma from Polytechnic. I will emphasize this 4 year. These 4 years are very important years for his life, because this 4 year was the foundation for what Einstein became at the rest of his life. So this university education is the foundation. School education was military, he didn't like it, but university education, this 4-year university education, that makes him Einstein. So I'll emphasize this school education a little bit later. Then 1901, he became Swiss citizen, because he couldn't find actually any job in Germany or anywhere, and also he was like frustrated about the German military type system. So he became the Swiss citizen in 1901. It is not only that German, he didn't like German, it was also for getting a job. So you see that at that time, even Einstein immigrated several times. So he went from Germany to Switzerland, and then Switzerland to again back to Germany, and then he actually came to USA. So he had to actually move around the world. In 1902, and at the same time, when he was struggling, at the same time, his romantic life was not stopped. He was in love, and also in 1902, he had a daughter. Her name was Lizerl, and she was born out of wedlock to his future wife, Mileva Merrick. And Mileva Merrick was his colleague, his classmate, but Mileva couldn't pass. So later on, she tried to pass again the university, but couldn't pass. So later she dropped. And 1903, they were married and they moved to Bern. At that time, even when they were marrying, they didn't have a job. So right after getting married, Einstein's friend, one of the influential friends, helped him get a job in a patent just office. So in 1904, Einstein joined the Swiss Patent Office. A lot of people say Einstein was a clerk. Yes, he was a clerk, but his job description and the position was a technical expert, third class. So his job was a third class technical expert. Nowadays, if we compare this job with our, say, Bangladesh standard, these are very much like a laboratory technician. So if we say in our university, if there is a laboratory, there are some technician who actually just handle the machine, something like that. It's very much that kind of job. So what are we facing here? We're facing that even that time in Europe, with very number one top university, a student pass called Albert Einstein, he did not get a job for 3 years. He tried to actually get a job for many different avenues. He was a private tutor as well. He gave a big signboard to actually get student for private tuition and etc. But he couldn't actually do anything there. So finally he got a job, and that was the technical expert third class job. At that time, his eldest son, Albert, was born. And think about it. He just got a job, worked 1 full year. And next year, 1905, that was his miracle year. So as we're thinking, he's looking for a job. He was passed in 1900, and then for like almost 3-4 years, what did he do in these 3-4 years? He was frustrated. He was looking for a job. At the same time, he was like trying to make a family and etc. He was struggling. But his scientific work was not stopped. Before 1905, he already published 5 scientific papers, 5 of them. And these 5 scientific papers all actually published in Annalen der Physik. That was a kind of like this highest rank journal. How did he publish them there? Well, the journal policy was like this. If they accept one single paper from an author, say suppose one of my paper was accepted in that journal, after publication of that journal, whatever I submit, they will publish it. So that was a good system. Nowadays it's invalid, but at that time that was the system. So if somehow one paper is published, all the paper published. Remember, I think whenever it comes, I will actually explain. Einstein was a very, very strong critic about reviewing system. He did not like journal review system. In one occasion, he submitted only one paper to the physical review. Only once he submitted one paper in a physical review. At that time, he was already a Nobel laureate. So Physical Review journal was in English. Definitely it was translated by his secretary. And he was already at that time in America, in Princeton, and he submitted his paper in the Physical Review. He expected that without any single word, it would be accepted. But American system is different. They criticize everything. That's why they stand with science. So they criticized his paper, and they asked him to review something, change some words, some line, and etc. He was furious because he said, "This is my authority. This is my paper, my thinking, my thought. How would another person who never did that work would suggest me how to write? So that is not right." So he actually did not publish any other paper in Physical Review. So that was the Albert Einstein. But nowadays it's not like that. Even like any paper, even Stephen Hawking's paper needed to be reviewed, needed to be changed, because no exception there. Okay, so that's why it's science. So in 1905, it was his miracle year. He published 4 groundbreaking papers. He submitted 6 papers. Out of 6 papers, 4 were published in 1905. 2 actually published in the later year, next year. So that 4 papers, all are groundbreaking, including the light quanta that actually win a Nobel Prize for him. Special theory of relativity was there. Equals mc square was there, and Brownian motion was there. Brownian motion concept was previous, but the other 3 papers, they completely change our physics. At that time, what he was just a technical expert, 3rd class. But he used to have worked before. How did he do his job? Without any training? Well, he did not have any training before. But remember, his parents have an industry of electrical industry. During that time, all the patent people are applying, it's based on electrical thing. Very much. All the equipments they are measuring, they are getting patented. These are all electrical things. So he was an expert in it. So to test this thing, suppose he's supposed to work 6 hours a day. All this work he had to do because he's overqualified. So he did everything like within an hour. So the rest 5 hours, he used to work on his own. He used to use all the envelope used to come. So those are all rejected things. So you actually collect it. He used to write the other side of the envelope with a pencil because he can actually rub it off. And whenever his supervisor, because he's a 3rd class, so there are 2nd class, 1st class, and a lot of supervisors, a lot of managers of him, they were actually keeping an eye on him, but he was actually stealing the time from his office. So he used to write something like that, and whenever see somebody, he just try to hide it and pretend that he is working for the office work. So you see that this is not a bad thing. But if we can actually say he was actually stealing the time from the office. But anyway, so that was good. Later on, a lot of his colleagues who actually did not like him, even that time, a lot of people, they don't like other people's good thing. So these other people, they used to say, "Oh, Einstein was not working in the university. He did not have to do any class or anything. That's why he had lots of time. So that's why he could do this. If we get that chance, we would have done that." So those people, as if they were the patent clerk, they would do this thing, same thing. So you see, this is nothing. In every time, it's a kind of timeless effort. Even from Socrates' time, people used to say that thing. Einstein time, people say that. Even Hawking's time, that people say that. In Pretam times, people will say that. And they forward the future students' time, people will say that. That's normal. So 1906, he got doctorate from the University of Zurich. His doctoral thesis was just only 17 pages long. And that was no guide, no supervisor. And at that time, these PhD theses needed to be written by a student and needed to be submitted to the university. And there was no time frame that you have to do like this many years or something like that. If you can write a thesis in overnight, you can submit it. If somebody say, yes, this is a kind of PhD worthy work, they can give it. But Einstein's thesis was actually rejected for so many times. So he had to write, rewrite, he had to change the topic and etc. So that was lots of work. So still he managed to get his PhD in 1906. And then within 3 years, he got his first academic post in Zurich University. That was his first academic post. Remember, to get his first academic post, he had to give lots of interviews. And that first academic post was unpaid. So it was a kind of assistantship. You will take a class or something like that. You will give a class to the class and so on. And Einstein was actually a very bad teacher. Very bad teacher means nobody understood what we were saying. He used to talk very like swept, and for the arrangement of the like a kind of demonstration class, he had to bring his friends there just to support him. So that was a kind of thing, but somehow at the end, with many people's recommendation, he got an academic position. But that was the start. Then when he became a kind of like a attraction of the European physicist, everybody wants him into their universities. So in 1910, his second son, Edward, was born, but Edward was autistic. So it was a problem for his wife to get attention and so on. And also like a continuous nursing care was required, but Einstein was not interested. So Einstein was not a very good father. Nobody could say that, because Einstein actually did not give enough attention, because his life at that time was very much concentrated for his research. So that research was lone researcher. There was no support for him. There was no assistance for him. He was doing everything. And then that's why he became a theoretical physicist. He used to see that like this is my industry or whatever laboratory, and the pencil is only apparatus he needs. So he had that. 1911, he joins the German University in Prague, and he was just only 1 year at that time there. And then 1912, he came back as a professor in Zurich Polytechnic. And then in 1914, he became the professor at the University of Berlin. And that time, he had another extramarital affair, and he wanted to get a separation from his wife. So he got a separation from Mileva. So Mileva took the two boys with her, and they were separated. So then in 1915, you see, his family life was at that time very complicated. He did not have any peace of mind in the family. His job was very like today here, next day another one, and so on. But during that time, his special theory of relativity is already published, but he was working on the general theory of relativity. And 1915, he completed his general theory of relativity. And 1916, that general theory of relativity was published. And that was whole European people were actually eager, especially the scientists, the Sir Eddington. He was interested to apply that general theory of relativity to see whether light bends. So only during the solar eclipse, it can be tested. So in 1919, so like 14th February, that was somehow people say it's a kind of like the 14th February is the Valentine's Day. Einstein chose that Valentine's Day actually to get divorced. So he get divorced from Mileva that day. And 6th of June in 1919, he married another one, Elsa. That was his cousin. But that year, at the end of 1919, Eddington proved that the general theory of relativity is correct. And through the observation of a solar eclipse, and Einstein thrives. His theory was trumping, and overnight, Einstein was a sensation of the world. So he got famous. So just one single theory of relativity, general theory of relativity, made him famous. So he is the most wisest person in the world from that day. So then he was suddenly become like a kind of attention, a center of the attention, all of the world, every journalist wanted to have a bite from him and etc. And he was like almost suffocated in Europe. He wanted to go somewhere else. So he has got lots of invitation from Japan and etc. So he went to Japan in 1921. 1921, he went to US first time, and he was very famous in the US because of this publicity. But it was not his first visit to US, was not a scientific visit. Nobody invited him to give a scientific talk, but he went there to actually raise funds for Hebrew University, because at that time in Jerusalem, so Hebrew University was like being established, and he was a good supporter of Hebrew University, and he went there to raise some funds for Hebrew University. After coming back from there, and he had another like the trip to Japan, Indonesia, and then Asian countries. And during that time, the 1921 Nobel Prize was not declared in 1921. It was declared in 1922 when he was on ship to Japan. So he got that news when he was in Japan. And then it was like everybody was so very happy. Here in the image, you can see that he was having a party with this Japanese, the host and etc. So he was very happy to get his Nobel Prize in 1921, Nobel Prize in 1922, and he received this one in actually 1923. So then another milestone comes from us, from the Dhaka University. In 1924, a letter and a paper Einstein received from our S.N. Bose. You see this letter here. This is S.N. Bose letter from Dhaka University. And then you can see that he's the reply from Einstein. So Einstein replied in German, and Bose actually initial one, and the paper was in English. So what Einstein did, a couple of letter back and forth. Remember, at that time there was no good telephone system. There was no internet, definitely nothing, no computer, nothing. It was all calculation done by hand. And our S.N. Bose, Satyam Bose, did while he was teaching this in the class, physics class in Dhaka University. So there was a tie between Einstein and Bose. So Einstein, what he did, he actually translated Bose's paper, translated, and then few sentences added, and at the end he just got a recommendation. It was in German, remember, so it's Analander physics. So when something comes from Einstein, that is publishable. So that was published, and another history was made. In 1925, Bose-Einstein formulation, Bose-Einstein condensation was discovered. And later years, from when quantum mechanics developing, and then when we have got a different types of particle that's required, that is named boson. So we have got boson. In this planet, all the particles are either fermions or bosons. Half of the particles are bosons. And that is named after Satyam Bose. You see, that is another hermit we have got. Satyam Bose, when he got everything is done, he actually lost interest in it. He never was for any fame, and he never wanted to publish anything. So he did not actually pursue his own discovery, because he said, I have understood it, so I go for something else. So that was Satyam Bose. But anyway, nowadays we can't even think of it that way. Anyway, so in 1930, Einstein was invited from America, and that was his second trip. And during that time, it was a difficult political scenario in Europe. Hitler was rising. So Einstein was a Jew, and Einstein and other Jew scientists were a threat for Hitler. So Hitler wanted to kill them, all of them. So Einstein was like, at that time, he was actually a property of the world. So he was an asset of the world. So Americans asked him to stay back. He received a temporary post at Caltech as a theoretical physicist, but he wanted to come back, and he back to Switzerland and that area, but he did not come back to Germany. And then in 1932, in Americans, they actually created a position for Einstein because they wanted to take Einstein in a safe place in America by any way, because Americans, they knew that they are getting a huge flux of very high caliber scientists from Europe, especially from Germany. So that took all of them. Before the Second World War, if you look at the Nobel Prize, everything, almost 90% Nobel Prize went to German scientists. After Second World War, again, it's all going to the European scientists, but they are now all Americans. So that actually the peak of the Nobel Prizes. And later on, Americans are actually, from the beginning, they have got a Nobel Prize project, something like that. They wanted to get lots of Nobel Prizes. Anyway, so this one, Einstein was actually biking in the Celtic area. So he was saying one thing, the philosophy, great philosophy he was saying about the bicycle. He's saying that life is like a bicycle. If you are actually riding on it, if you are continuously moving, you are not falling down. If you are stopped, you are down. So life should be that way. So this philosophy was with him. And then 1933, Hitler actually just came to Germany, and then Einstein got a permanent immigration in USA, and his wife died in 1936. And 1939, Einstein wrote a letter to President Roosevelt about the atomic bomb. So that was actually really a bombshell, because Einstein asked Roosevelt to make a bomb. And that bomb, why? Because Einstein got news from Germany that the Germany is already developing an atomic bomb. If Germany develops fast, and they will definitely use it, so the mankind will be destroyed. But American, they took this thing, and then Einstein wrote letter to Roosevelt, and that time they have already got the Manhattan Project and so on. Einstein straightway said he will not go anywhere for the project, because the project was done in a very confidential places. Einstein was asked to do some work for the project, and he agreed to do the project work, but he said he will not go anywhere. He will be just in Princeton. So what was the case? That project, what he had to look at, that was the US Navy project. That was very, 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 very top secret project. So who would bring the files to him? George Gamow. We know George Gamow. So George Gamow, the famous George Gamow, was the person who used to bring all the briefs to Einstein. And Einstein used to check, his job was to check all this project, whether they have got the merits. So George Gamow wrote later that the Einstein used to check everything and then never rejected any project. He said everything is okay. So you see, he was too far about that. But later on, when Americans actually used that bomb on Japan, Einstein was so sad. He said he did a mistake. He did not know that Germany did not develop it. If he knew that Germany did not develop it, he would try to stop it. But anyway, in 1940, he became US citizen. He got a US passport, and with that passport, he did not actually go anywhere from far from USA, because at that time he was already like a kind of getting old. And then he was trying to do, right after his general theory of relativity, he tried to do like the grand unification theory, a kind of ground unification theory to get, but he never get even near to it. So his American life was not very fruitful. He was very famous. People, journalists, everybody would come to get a bite from him for anything, from starting from food to movie to everything. But he could not get a good research groove. He did not get any student there. He did not get a class to teach. He did not have a good groove. Even in the Princeton, there are so many Nobel laureates later after Einstein, but they never had any research collaboration with Einstein. Why was that? Because people used to there was a kind of like respect distance. And also Einstein was not very good at English. And like the American scientists, they are very fast. If nobody understands them, they don't actually go to them. So that is a kind of somehow there was nothing happened that way. And when the World War II were ended, Einstein said, well, yes, the war is won, but the peace is not. Then he became pacifist, and then he actually did a lot of work to stop the war around the world and etc. And he was the chair for emergency committee of atomic scientists. And basically it was a kind of like a non-active committee that could not stop anything there. And then Mileva died in 1948. His like younger sister Maya was with him in the Princeton house. She also died, and Einstein became like very kind of lonely, and only his secretary Helen Dukas was with him at that time, and also his adopted daughter was with him. And in 1952, it was shown a kind of political career. A huge political chance actually came to him when Israel's first president died. So they actually formed a committee, and that committee came to Einstein to ask him to become the president of Israel. So Israel was a kind of dream country for Einstein. Einstein loved Israel. Einstein loved the Hebrew University and everything. Einstein worked for that country. But when that country asked him to become a president, he declined it. He said, when you become a president or that kind of position, you will become a partisan. So when you become a partisan, you cannot be neutral. That means you cannot say a spade all the time. So that is a big thing. So that is a big lesson for us as well. So if you cannot avoid even the presidency, he just declined. And then in next 3 years, his health was not very good, and he died in 1955, 18th of April. So that was his life, and he was and even when he was so famous, he used to walk, and it was not like that there was no people, no selfie, that kind of thing was not exist at that time. And then people used to write a lot of letter to him, especially the young kids, and he used to reply those. And then also he used to have gathering in his birthdays. The kids used to come into their his house and etc. So he had a peaceful a bit personal life. So that was good. So my point now, what was the limitation he faced during his student life? You see, definitely resources compared to now was very limited. No computer, so that means everything is needed to be done by brain, hand, and paper. No internet, that means limited resources. The books, publication, and etc. Einstein never studied any English literature. Literature written in English, no, because he did not even know English very well. Anything, his correspondence and everything was in German, and he had to have secretary to actually like translate it for him. And limited options for job. So there was no job for him. And then before he started, he would know that there is no job for him. And also the teachers were brutal. Nowadays, when we just give a kind of mark, not A plus, the students become so upset. Oh, why I'm not A plus? Even my friend gets A plus. So it doesn't matter. It should be not your friend or somebody else got A plus. It is the quality should be actually looked at. But in Einstein's time, it was very, very difficult with the students. Einstein had one teacher, one demonstrator, Mr. The Purcell. So that guy hated Einstein during his school. So whatever Einstein did, this person would give him a 0 for it. So Einstein was really, really a kind of like very frustrated. So how he survived? Well, he didn't like, later on, he have written everything about his school. He didn't like it. So now his good timing was his student life in the university, that is the Polytechnic. So if you look at his student life, the first 10 years, you can see that from 1879 to 1889. So that was all the education he got from popular science. So nowadays, a lot of popular science are being written. If the popular science are actually like written in a good way, that the gist, that is very accessible for even any student. So that is important. So Einstein got lots of delivery from him, from one of the medical student who used to come to his house, and that used to discuss. So at home, he have learned a lot of things, not from the school, but from the some other type of books. Then we have got from his 1890 to 1894, that is the 4 senior years in the gymnasium, they call it, that is the high school. So what he has got, that was basically not very good for him, because like say he has got to study religious thing, so that is some religion. So he did not like it, because was direct contradiction of what science says and what the religion book says. So he became a free thinker, because religion gives you some kind of law that is not logical. Even that is not logical, because you follow that. So you need to somehow like a kind of compromise your brain. So Einstein thought that no, I can't compromise it. So he became a free thinker when he was even like at the age of like 16, 17 and so. And then he got geometry. And when he just going away from his religion, he just start calling his science book a religion book. He named geometry as a holy geometry book. So he's a kind of balancing. He's doing it. And then he actually say, like, when he later year, at the early years, his mother was a very good pianist and good a person of music. So Einstein had a talent for music, but in the early year when he was forced to have music, he didn't like it. But later on his own, he liked music. So he started actually just music, violin, and etc. in his school life at the end, like the year 9 and 10 and so on. So he became very good at it. And later on, it was a good pastime for his violin and etc. So, and then when the family moves to Milan, he has got the high school, and then during that time he have learned some more, and then he failed the Munich school, and then later on, what happens? So he passed, and from there, in 1896, he renounced the German citizenship, and then he started the Polytechnic from 1900. So 1896 to 1900 was his golden year of his student life, we can say. So Einstein entered as a student, as I earlier mentioned, is the teacher, to become a teacher in the diploma program. So there were 1,800 students. Out of that 1,800 students, only 23 wanted to become teacher. So the other 800 students, they all wanted to become engineers. So why Einstein didn't want to get engineering? Because he thought that teaching was his passion, because he had very bad students, bad teachers in his school life. He wanted to become a good teacher. So it is a kind of thing that what he wanted to feel like, that how teaching should be, he wanted to be one of them. And in the Polytechnic, it was a different types of scenario at that time, the student life. It was each student had individual study plan, every one of them. So that means there is not a compulsory subject for everyone. It's like there are like hundreds of subjects. I can choose my subjects. So that means I have got choice what I want. And there are few core courses, like there are list of core courses and list of the elective courses. The core courses are graded. That means I need to give like the appear for an exam only for the core courses. But for the elective courses, there is no exam. Nowadays, if there is no exam, I think everybody would become very upset, except the students. So because I am learning something not for passing the exam, but for to know, I think that is more effective. That worked for Einstein. But I don't know what today will happen, because today we have got like hundreds of exams for everything. So that time it was not, and Einstein later told that that is fine. So what Einstein took? For his core courses, he took lots of mathematics. So what happens with that mathematics? That mathematics gave him to become a theoretical physicist. Without mathematics, nobody can become a theoretical physicist. If somebody doesn't have good maths ability, they should go for the experimental physicist. It's not like that everybody has to be very good mathematics. Our C.B. Raman's mathematical ability was not as good as our Satyen Bose. But C.B. Raman has gotten a skill for experiment. He got Nobel Prize for it. And that experiment, the material he made just only for 200 rupees. So that was the spirit. So Einstein took elective subject. They used to take only few elective subjects, one elective subject, but he took many, because you can take as many as you can actually handle, and it doesn't have any exam. So he took, look at us. This is important for us to look at. He took the Goethe's work and worldview. That is Goethe's work. Kant's philosophy, that actually started his philosophical mind. And he took prehistory of man, geology of mountains, politics and cultural history of Switzerland, banking and stock exchange, social consequences of free competition, statistics and personal insurance, and foundation of national economy. So you see that as a student, he knows everything, the scientist and need to environment, he knew everything. So today we may get a very good engineer, but doesn't know anything about economics or maybe something. So nowadays we can't actually think of this kind of educational system. But the good thing is that Polytechnic, the Swiss Polytechnic, still has got that system. So what about the exam? Only 2 sets of exam for the whole 4 year. And what sorts of exam is this? 2 viva oral exams. One at the year 2, end of second year, and another one at the end of 4th year. No more exam. So one written exam, no exam, written exam. Actually, it is a kind of written thesis, diploma thesis at the end of year 4. A student will choose the a title, choose the topic, and then write a thesis. That's it. So what about this student? Are they learning anything? The answer is they are learning everything. So that's why they enjoyed this thing. And Einstein later actually said that. So you see that here, this one actually shows the Einstein got like the highest score among math and physics in his second year exam. But in the 4th year exam, he got like the 4.96 out of 6. You know what was the pass mark for that, like the final, the fourth year final exam? The pass mark was 5 out of 6. So 5 out of 6 is the 5. Somebody has to get 5 to pass, but Einstein got 4.96, almost failed. So, but it was rounded up to 5, so he passed. So he was the fourth out of like 5 students. So another student failed because God, like the Mileva, his wife later, she failed because she got only 4 out of 6. So that was a kind of like disaster for, but Einstein, he was so good, but his exam was not that good. So what that shows? That shows like that if somebody is really, really good, it doesn't mean that this person has to be like a kind of very good result or something like that. Result doesn't mean anything. So Einstein told later clearly that he enjoyed it. He enjoyed his intellectual stomach. He called it it suits all the studies suits my intellectual stomach and my interest. And some lecturers would follow intense interest, and some lecturer were not very good, so he used to skip those classes. So instead he used to use physics, just sitting at home and etc. So another thing was not there, no discollegiate or non-collegiate thing at that time. So if you don't come to class, doesn't matter. If you can like survive, if you can pass the like oral exam at the end, that's fine. So in all, there were only 2 examinations. For the rest, one could do what he wanted, a freedom. And he studied, he enjoyed that freedom. So can we give freedom to our students? I don't think so. Why not? I don't know. So that's the thing. Another thing very important I wanted to do here, I think a lot of our students now, they go for group studies, what they call it. Group studies is very important. Einstein, when he could not find a job, he just established a 3-person academy, call it Olympia Academy. So Konrad Havish, Maurice Slovine, and Albert Einstein, these 3, they become a very good friend for their whole life, and they did the science discussion. That was very, very important. No syllabus, completely free thinking. And Einstein developed that idea at that time, saying the imagination is more important than knowledge. Einstein used to say another thing: whatever I can find from a book, I will not memorize it. I don't need to, because I can find it from the book. If somebody did something there, I don't need to do it again because it's already done. So what I need to think something. I need to have some imagination. What else I can do? How differently I can do it? That actually creates knowledge, new knowledge. But what are we doing today everywhere? We have got like some kind of like 100 years old science, and we are actually repeating, and then students are actually memorizing and repeat in the exam book, and they got first class. And then we have got lots of science degree students who have got science degree. We don't have any scientist. I'm so sorry for it. So what happened in the 19th and 20th century? I just show you this one from where Einstein get his first 5 papers. You see, at that time, until 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, it was all mechanics, thermodynamics, and electrodynamics, all 3 different avenues. And when they actually meets, like the mechanics and thermodynamics meets, we have got a statistical revolution from the Brownian motion. When mechanics and electrodynamics meets, we have got the relativity revolution there. And when thermodynamics and electrodynamics meets, we have got quantum revolution there. You see that this heat radiation and everything, Planck's radiation, everything comes from there, thermodynamics and electrodynamics. So that was the starting point. And this was no new science, but we have got new knowledge from there. And that came from Einstein. Within first 4 years, from 1900 to 1904, everything was a kind of review paper, and he published. So that means when we write a paper and then publish, we show that we comprehend, we understand it. So that understanding is the new knowledge. It's showing that I understand science. So writing a paper, it's very important. Today, our university should actually emphasize our students to write a project paper and then try to publish it. because when they try to publish it, only they can get real feedback. If I am marking, I'm not giving the real feedback because I want to give them mark. But when they try to publish it, when reviewer give their feedback, that is not mark, but that is the real feedback. We want that. So that is important. Now, the miracle papers in 1905. So that one whole year, he wrote 6 papers. Out of 6 papers, we have got 4 papers, 4 that groundbreaking. We have got photoelectric effect. We have got his PhD thesis, that is classical thermodynamics. We have got Brownian motion. We have got space-time concept, the special theory of relativity. And also we have got the famous paper E equals mc squared. Do you know that how many pages this paper long? Only 3 pages. Only 3 pages that revolutionized the whole world, E equals mc squared. And then finally, we have got the future, the further Brownian motion. All these 6 papers written in the same year. And we can even see that when it is submitted March, August, May, June, September, December. And these were all published. And the pages, you can see that 17, 18, 12, 31. And this one, the miracle paper E equals mc squared, only 3 pages. And I tried to translate that paper, and I found that I give up because there is all mathematics. So there is nothing to translate, actually. It is so highly mathematical. So Einstein was very skeptic about the quantum theory. But he didn't even know that he actually opened a huge avenue for quantum theory. The Einstein's quantum theory is now the 21st century quantum theory. What Einstein did, if you look at the starting, there are 2 starting points. One is atomic physics and particle, another is light and wave phenomena. So atomic, we used to have before, like say, like the Balmer, Rees, Rydberg, etc. And on the other hand, the quantum, that's the Planck started. Then Einstein wrote the photoelectric, the 1905 and 6. Then Bohr developed our atomic theory in 1913. And then de Broglie come here with the matter wave. And then Bose-Einstein. Remember, Bose has given a huge input there, even without recognizing it. Bose didn't actually care for it, but Bose actually given us the quantum theory. So Bose-Einstein, then Schrödinger picked it up, and then later on Pauli, Dirac, and Jordan, we have got the quantum theory of electrons, nuclei, and photons. Later on, we have got quantum electrodynamics by the hand of Richard Feynman. So you see that these are all the path made by Einstein. And even Einstein didn't practice after 1930 because he was doing something else. So science is like that. Even some people, if I am doing something, just a small brick in the whole highway, our student, if they write one single paper, that may be a single brick to the science highway, but we need to contribute it. We cannot be just as a science student, we cannot be just a runner or walker on the path. We need to be maker of the path. At least if we cannot do anything, at least we can actually just a kind of plant a tree on it. What is that plant? I say trees are normally, it can be a review paper. So that is a kind of give you somebody other shades. So we should do something. So now this is my last slide, actually. I am a little bit over time. So Einstein in 21st century, what we need in our education. We need to be very whoever, I don't know who make this thing, because somehow the education system in Bangladesh and many other countries, they try to make it like non-transparent as far as they can. They suddenly say, okay, we do from tomorrow like this. I don't know why, because the real educator who teaches, they are not involved. So that basically very frustrating. First thing, like early enchantment is very important. That means the young minds should be scientific. So that means, are we really interested to know? Suppose I am not scientific at all. I don't care science. So in that case, I can be happy with some popular science, popular conception. I don't need to go through it, because at the end, after passing my engineering degree or my physics degree, master's degree, I say, no, I don't like it. So why you wasted that time? The first, another one is confidence building is very important. Can we really do it? So we need to test our student just not from the problem from the book. We need to give them problem to solve themselves. We need freedom for solo initiative. That means do whatever you like, but be good at it. Whatever you do, you should be good at it, and you need to be innovative. What's new in it? So that needed to be encouraged. Supportive friends, study with friends, not in the coaching center to get high marks. We need to actually abolish the marking system. It can be a kind of band. So you are in this band or this band, that's enough. The marking system should not be there. Well, this is my personal opinion because I am influenced somehow by Einstein here. Another thing is cultural resonance. We should know our culture. We are thinking now, even if we just publish a paper in a good research journal, we think that we are like a Nobel worthy. That is not true, because Nobel Prize is completely different avenue. Do something just for useful for the science, and even sometimes if it is not useful, like say Einstein says, if somebody writing 100 papers in 2 days, it doesn't matter. He doesn't care for it. He cares how people try to do new things. If that new things is very difficult, if somebody working their whole life even without publication, publishing a paper, he actually respect that person because that person trying to do something. He just told people that some people have got try to find a piece of wood and try to find where is the very like the soft part, and then make like 10 holes there and then saying, look what I did. So Einstein did not actually have any respect for it. He said, if you really try to do something, you need to work hard and you need to know your culture and you need to be resonating your culture. What does that mean? That means we need to know what we have and we need to try our best to actually use that what we have. Okay, I think with that, thank you so much. And as I like this picture of Einstein very well, because that is a kind of attitude you have got. I am like what his intention with that image was. He said he's happy. So that's the thing. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. So we have got some question. If you allow, we can start discussion.
Definitely, yes.
So, so the first question: from where the mystery of speed of light came to the mind of Einstein since very early age? The first question.
While the speed of light, it was not actually the Einstein conception. Einstein conception came that the speed of light would be the highest speed for anything. But speed of light actually came from electromagnetic conception from basically that was for long before Einstein, but it was there. But Einstein concept came from the special theory of relativity when he was working with it, and when he found like that the speed of a particle and the speed of light, when he put that into the formula, and that really works, and because it doesn't fit. So in the vacuum, the maximum speed of anything is can be speed of light. So that actually came from there.
Thank you, sir. We have another question. So, how could Einstein realize that the flaws in conventional Newtonian mechanics from very childhood?
From the very childhood, he actually did not find any flaws of the Newtonian mechanics, and he did not have any intention to actually destroy Newton. He started with a different avenue, and then actually the Newton mechanics was destroyed by Max Planck and the quantum group. Einstein was actually at the beginning very skeptic about the quantum mechanics. He had a kind of like against quantum mechanics in his first few years. So he was very much for Newton. But the European group, the young European quantum group, they actually destroyed the Newtonian mechanics. But it's not, we cannot actually say destroy it, because if you slow the quantum particles, if you slow their speed of light, not compared to the speed of particle, if they are not compared to the speed of light, if you bring it to a bit down, it actually follows the classical mechanics. So we call that the correspondence principle. So it's basically the Newton is not destroyed, and still without Newton, we cannot survive. Like say, I cannot sit without the third law of Newton. I cannot actually walk without the second law of Newton. And basically, like, so Newton mechanics can be clearly explained by applying quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics is a kind of like not the enemy. We can say it's a kind of like the friend to the classical mechanics.
Thank you, sir. We have another question related to this. So, is it true that Einstein didn't believe in quantum mechanics because he didn't understand it?
Uh, uh, well, Einstein did not actually say that he did not believe it because he did not understand it. Einstein actually initially did not even interested to actually understand it, because he actually looked at it, what it is, what's going on, and then he thinking that uh, he was for a kind of definitive answer for anything. He said that if there is a an event, it should have a definite answer for it. So that's why Einstein told that the God doesn't play dice. Okay, so that means something to be definite. So that's what he didn't actually try to understand. But later on, Richard Feynman told us, everybody, that nobody understands quantum mechanics. So nobody understands quantum mechanics is true. So, but it is not that like if I don't understand, so that's why I was against it. Einstein was not like that. Einstein was actually having a kind of continuous the discussion with Niels Bohr, and that discussion actually helped quantum mechanics to develop, because Einstein helped them to answer so many different types of questions. And later on, Dirac actually developed if there was any loophole that initially there was no quantum mechanics for electrons. So, and then photons. So it basically came later on. And even the way the real quantum mechanics was developed, that was redeveloped by Feynman. So, and then Feynman, one of the redeveloper of quantum mechanics, and he was saying, nobody understands quantum mechanics. So that actually feels us. I feel so good because I don't understand any of these things. And so I feel, oh, nobody understands. But it doesn't mean that like the brains like Einstein or Feynman don't understand. They understand it.
Thank you, sir. This may be the last question. So, what happened to Einstein's brain after his death?
That is a very good question. Actually, what happens when Einstein died, the person who was working, uh, he was very curious about the Einstein brain, and without any permission, he opened his brain and took the brain and then put in a jar, and then he just tried to do a kind of neurological experiment later to see how his brain, Einstein's brain, was different to it, and so on. But the thing is, he forgot that if the brain is not actually, if the brain is dead, if the cell is actually dead, it couldn't produce any sorts of like the kind of system signal. So it was a problem because the cell, brain cell, my cell, Einstein's cell, or any other person's cell would be same. Like their biology are the same, but the neurological thing, that is different. Like say Feynman, Richard Feynman actually answered this question later in a one way, saying that say, suppose when I am talking, I am actually producing lots of phonon. We call it like the sound particle, the phonons. Okay, so we are producing lots of phonons. So where these phonons are, was this actually somewhere stored in my brain, or are my lyrics? Where was it, and how I am producing it? So when I'm producing it, it's basically a kind of very instantaneous process. I have got this question when you like a kind of pronounce that question. It's hit my brain. and my brain is producing something based on my knowledge. If I don't know anything, I cannot actually talk on anything. But there are some people, like especially political people, without knowing, they can talk a lot. But that's different issue. But here, when you know something, then you can produce. If I don't know, I'll say no. So from where it's coming? It's coming from the brain cell. But Einstein's brain afterwards, so it was actually ruined. So that brain, it was ruined, and some were actually just kind of retrieved from it, and they were in a museum. That's it now at this moment.
Yeah, thank you, sir. As we don't have any more questions, so we should conclude our discussion session, sir. It's a
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
conversation, sir, with you. And our aim also was that when we have started our this international physics survey to motivate. That is very important because if we don't motivate our students, they may be demotivated in science. So we are trying. I don't know what will happen later, but we are trying that if anybody from students motivated by our program, because we bring the world scientists in this platform and they can interact with them, and I think uh, they might learn a lot of things through this process. And I think this way someday they might join in a research group and do some good work in science later. So thanks, sir, for helping
Thank you
us
very much.
in doing this, and thanks again for accepting our invitation. I would like to say thanks on the behalf of the Department of Physics, Pabna University of Science and Technology, sir. For we are very grateful to you. And thanks
Thank you,
again.
everyone. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, bye for today, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.